France's world-famous Notre Dame Cathedral is on fire. French firefighters have confirmed that the landmark is ablaze and that a major operation is underway to stop it. A spokesman from City Hall said the area was being cleared. You're looking at videos from Paris of the church that are circulating on social media. The cathedral was completed in the 14th century and is considered to be one of the finest examples of French Gothic architecture. Well, Al Jazeera's Fintan Monahan is here with us in the studio. Fintan, this is a huge loss for France, isn't this, and the world?
A massive understatement, you might even say. I mean, we're talking about a building that stood on that site for nearly a millennium, and it's been obliterated in a single night. I mean, it's something Parisians will feel for a long, long time.
Well, and there's anger about this.
Absolutely anger. People will be looking for someone to blame. There's no sign of foul play at the present time. Well, by all accounts, this is an accident that's happened. There's nothing to suggest otherwise. But that doesn't mean that Parisians won't feel this extremely acutely. This is something that's interwoven into Parisian history. This is the building where Napoleon was crowned as Emperor of France. This is where Parisians celebrate the end of World War II. So beyond the religious significance of the building, it's got huge secular significance as well. It's iconic to all Parisians and all people in France, and indeed, as you say, all of Europe as well.
And a lot of people are echoing what Donald Trump said in a tweet just a few minutes ago, that why weren't water cannons used for this from the air, from helicopters? Why wasn't more done to stop this earlier on, because it was burning for about an hour before we were seeing water cannon?
Certainly there'll be questions asked about what happened, but also there'll be a lot of second guessing, looking back with hindsight as to what could have been done. I think we're going to have to wait until there's a thorough investigation as to what caused this blaze, and also a look into what the preparations were and whether they did operate as intended. So these are questions that are hopefully going to be answered in the coming days.
Yeah, and what do you think is next as far as restoring what is lost here? Do you think that even possible?
I'm sure, there is no doubt that France will attempt to rebuild Notre Dame. It'll be a national project, and I'm sure Macron will hope that this is something all of Paris and all of France can get behind. But we've seen from the pictures ourselves, the damage to Notre Dame is profound. It's structural. The frame of the building has been profoundly damaged. We saw ourselves, the spire collapsed. It's not just the interior gutted, the building will never be as it was. So unfortunately, it is quite possible it may never be rebuilt as it was. This may be a landmark that will only live on in our memories and photographs from here on in.
And people are sharing pictures of themselves outside of Notre Dame, really trying to relive what the building used to look like. But this really feels similar to a natural disaster in a way, where you have this thing that is, I mean, the fact that it's a fire and is so uncontrollable. What do you think this means for Parisians moving forward? I mean, it's changed the landscape of the skyline. Paris is a relatively small city. It's really, as Macron said, a part of us is burning.
I think Macron has summed it up very, very well. People have likened it to 9/11, something that profoundly changes the skyline of a city forever. And while 9/11 is obviously a deliberate act, and there's no sign of that here, the sentiment is perhaps the same. Paris will move on. I'm sure Paris will recover, but there will be questions asked, and there will be a lot of soul searching. And even beyond France, there's probably not a school child in Western Europe that has not visited Notre Dame Cathedral at some point in their time and has these photographs of which you spoke, which they're probably looking at right now. It's something that is in all our memories and all our hearts. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Fintan, thank you for joining us here. Well, protest leaders in Sudan are demanding the new ruling military council be dissolved. They want a civilian government to be formed immediately, which includes representatives of the army. That's been backed up by the African Union, which urged the military to hand over power within 15 days. The protesters are calling for the former ruling party of deposed leader Omar al-Bashir to be disbanded and its assets seized. They're also demanding the removal of the head of the judiciary, his deputies, and the attorney general.
The objectives of the revolution cannot be achieved completely in the face of the backstage manipulations of the remnants of the regime. Our key demand is the formation of a civil council to guarantee the revolution is safeguarded and its goals achieved. A technocratic provisional government with executive powers must be formed with the consensus of the people.
Protesters in Tripoli are demanding Libya withdraw its ambassadors in Egypt, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and France. They're angry at those countries for supporting forces loyal to the warlord Khalifa Haftar, who's leading an offensive to take the capital. Demonstrators say Libya's representatives to the UN, Arab League, and the African Union should take a legal and diplomatic measure against Haftar and his forces. Meanwhile, a number of fighters loyal to Haftar have reportedly handed in their weapons and army vehicles to forces supporting the UN-backed government in Tripoli. The two sides have been fighting for control of the capital since earlier this month. The violence has forced thousands of people from their homes in the outskirts of the city. Mahmoud Abdelwahed reports from Tripoli on the worsening humanitarian situation.
Displaced in their own country. This is one of the many offices in the Libyan capital where people affected by the latest fighting have come to register their names. They're promised food and shelter. Faraj Muhammad left his home in Wadi al-Rubi' area south of Tripoli after random gunfire hit their house. He says he and his family narrowly escaped death.
Our house was in the crossfire from 3 directions, so I gathered my family and took shelter in one room. 5 minutes later, a rocket landed and exploded in the house. It destroyed 3 rooms.
Fighting has intensified near civilians' areas since forces loyal to warlord Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive to take control of the capital, Tripoli, on the 4th of April. The UN-backed Tripoli-based government has launched a counter-offensive to defend the capital. The fighting zone currently extends to around 160 kilometers south of Tripoli. It includes the areas of Qasr bin Ghshir, the disused international airport, Al-Suwani, Souq al-Khamis Msayhil, Wadi al-Rubi' and Ain Zara. Several locations in and around Tripoli have been also hit by airstrikes.
The United Nations says more than 9,000 people have left their homes to escape the fighting on the southern outskirts of Tripoli. Government officials here say that number continues to rise. And the UN-backed government is accusing Haftar's forces of targeting civilian areas with heavy weapons.
Muhammad Saleh says he saw dead bodies near his house and one of his neighbors was killed by a random bullet. He and his family hardly had any chance to collect their belongings.
We don't know where we should go. Life has been destroyed in our area. It's chaos there and we left everything behind, including our livestock.
They're being provided with food and blankets by aid organizations. But municipal council members say they don't have enough shelters to accommodate the growing number of displaced people.
500 families have registered only in the center. We are getting more people, but the problem we face now is that we don't have enough shelters. We have even used state hotels and hostels to lodge them.
Some of these people have been provided temporary houses by local donors, others hosted by their relatives. But as their own neighborhoods have turned into battle zone, they're worried the houses they've left behind could be destroyed in the fighting. Mahmoud Abdelwahed, Al Jazeera, Tripoli.
The U.S. Department of Justice is expected to release a redacted version of the Mueller report on Thursday. It would be sent to Congress and then made public. Attorney General William Barr is under pressure to publish the full report into possible collusion between Russia and Donald Trump's campaign during the 2016 presidential election. He released a summary of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's 400-page document last month. It said there was no evidence Trump's team worked with Moscow. Roslyn Jordan is with us live from Washington, D.C. Roslyn, what else do you expect to see in this report?
Well, the redactions that you referred to are going to be at least 4 categories. And this was previewed when the Attorney General, Bill Barr, testified before Congress last week. He said that these redactions really go to the question of protecting evidence that might be connected to criminal investigations, to protecting classified information, to trying not to cast aspersions on people who are not public figures, and then trying to basically also protect respect the sanctity of the grand jury, the sitting body at the district court here in Washington that has been looking at the evidence brought forward by the special counsel Robert Mueller during his investigation, which took just about 2 years to conduct. Now, of course, as you also intimated, Leah, this is a situation that members of Congress are going to push back against because they say not just the full unedited report, but also all of the evidence behind the report needs to be made public so that the American public can decide for itself whether or not there were crimes committed, whether or not any people should be held accountable, including the President, Donald Trump. Of course, this report is now scheduled to come out this coming Thursday, the 18th of April. It could possibly release earlier, but regardless, as soon as this report is released to members of Congress, you can expect that just about everyone here in Washington and perhaps across the country will be trying to download the 400-page report and trying to figure out just exactly what did happen during the 2016 presidential campaign.
Yet Donald Trump all along has called this a witch hunt. What kind of a reaction are we expecting from him and the Republicans as far as trying to perhaps downplay anything that could be incredibly damaging in this report?
Well, probably more of what we've already heard since Bill Barr sent his 4-page summary to Congress. A summary, we should note, was roundly criticized by Democrats and praised by Republicans. The message from congressional Republicans has been, look, the president wasn't found to have committed any crimes. We need to just move along. But congressional Democrats argue that because Bill Barr issued a summary instead of the full report, the full story has not been released. And so it's difficult to judge who exactly might have done something wrong. So you can expect that once this report comes out, all of the pushback that we saw last week here in Washington is probably going to ramp up tenfold, if not 100-fold, because this really has been dominating the political conversation here in Washington.
Thank you for that, Rosalind Jordan, joining us live from Washington, D.C. All right, still ahead on Al Jazeera, mistaking mortars for toys. 7 Afghan children killed in the latest reminder of the threat from unexploded munitions. And climate change protesters bring London to a standstill, kicking off days of planned rallies around the world.